Connor McDavid deserves the 3-game suspension he got for cross-checking Conor Garland in the face. When Matisz did it, he got 2, and that was his first ever punishment. In McDavid, well, he's a repeat offender, so 3 games, it makes sense. But I'm seeing posts that say he's well within his rights to lash out because of all the missed calls against him, including the one on Garland in this situation. Now, it is true that he's on pace to draw the least amount of minor penalties in his career, but it is also true that penalties league-wide are the lowest they have ever been in the salary cap era. Yes, Connor gets targeted, but this isn't just happening to him. The NHL is clearly changing how they officiate the game. Remember when everyone said ref the regular season the same way you do playoffs? Well, they're doing it. I do get why McDavid's frustrated. He gets hooked and held and interfered with as much as anyone, but calls are going to be missed, and that doesn't mean that you automatically deserve a get-out-of-jail-free card. So for the people saying that McDavid didn't deserve 3 games, well, I just don't agree. He got off for free for elbowing Marcus Johansson in the face a week ago. He didn't this time, and for once, I think the Department of Player Safety got it right. With that, welcome into Top Shelf, brought to you by our friends over at Skyscanner. I'm Aidan Thakkar, joined by John Matisz, Kyle Cushman, Levi Smith, the boys as always. And do you guys agree with me? 3 games, McDavid? Yeah.
I'm kind of into it where, like, anytime you get a stick that's, like, high up in, like, a tough situation like that where it's, like, a cross-check, like, there's intent to injure, you kind of have to give this. I was expecting 2, but anytime that there's head contact, head injuries, anything like that, I'm okay with it being on the longer side.
And you said to me before the show that, like, it happened late in the game too.
That's a great point. Yeah, it happened literally as the game ended. So maybe it's a situation where if it happens earlier in the third period, then maybe it's a 2-game thing. But because it happened at the end, they go to 3. Maybe it's a situation like that. But yeah, I have no problem with it being 3 games.
And as much as people are saying that, like, there's a NHL officiating issue, what league doesn't have an officiating issue?
That's true.
Is there any sport where people are like, I love the refs, right? No.
Well, and in this instance, like, I love that they're not favoring McDavid because he's a superstar. That's one of my least favorite takes in sports is when people are like, you got to protect your superstars, you got to favor them, you got to make sure that they're not getting hurt. It's like, no, they're a part of the game the same way that all the other players are part of the game. If a guy's getting mauled like McDavid, Garland should get a penalty. If McDavid cross-checks the guy in the face, it doesn't matter if he's McDavid or Joe Smith, he should get a penalty. Like that's one of those things that's always driven me up the wall when people are like pulling the superstar card. It's like, no, every player on the ice, same conditions, whether you're drawing a penalty or taking a penalty.
I'm seeing this connection of Patrick Mahomes in the NFL getting all these extra calls to McDavid not getting these extra calls. And then I also see all these videos from NFL people being like, Patrick Mahomes can't get all these calls. It's not fair. You can't just, like, favor one player because he brings in the most money. Well, so what do we want, right?
Yeah,
I don't know. It's tough.
It's a gray area for sure. Because if Patrick Mahomes was getting decked all game, I'm sure people would be upset. They'd be like, "This is the face of the league. Like, what are we doing?" And so, yeah, I think like what John said, same standard all around. There shouldn't be any problems, but there will always be problems.
And there's a middle ground, right, where Conor Garland is actually penalized for mauling Connor McDavid at the end of the game like that, holding whatever you want to call it. There should be a penalty on that play that prevents it from getting to the point where McDavid feels like he has to cross-check somebody in the face. But as John mentioned, if you're cross-checking somebody in the face, you need to be penalized as well. So there needs to be a middle ground where we're not, like, overly protecting these stars. Like, I think the comparison is more to, like, goaltenders in the way that we protect players in hockey versus, like, a quarterback situation in the NFL. But yeah, it's a situation where we probably need some more penalties in those certain circumstances to prevent things from getting to the point where we're seeing cross-checks or various other kind of dangerous plays.
Well, we know that Connor McDavid, as well as Tyler Myers, will not be playing in the rematch between the
How long
Oilers
did
and
it take
Canucks
to get to Tyler
this
Myers
week.
there?
One player who we don't know whether or not he will play in that game. That is JT Miller, star man for the Canucks, who reportedly was very close to becoming a New York Ranger before talks fell through. It was a deal around Ryan Lindgren, a first-round pick, Philip Hedl. But there's a few teams in the sweepstakes for JT Miller, so I want to get into the wraparound here. JT Miller, where's he going to end up? The most reported teams I've seen are Dallas, New Jersey, New York, especially with New Jersey's losing skid slump as of late. Maybe they're looking to make a change. We know New York's always looking to make a change, and he does seem like a perfect player for the Stars. John, what do you think?
Yeah, you can throw Carolina in there, who's been rumored as well, but I go to the Stars because it's kind of hard to take on $8 million in the middle of the season, And what the Stars are able to do with Tyler Seguin on LTIR is just put JT Miller right in their lineup and carry on about their business. And I think that, one, they need him to fill that Tyler Seguin role because there's a hole there currently. And also, I feel like this is the type of move that makes sense for them even moving forward because JT Miller has a contract that runs 5 years after this one. And guess what? Jamie Benn's coming off the books this summer. That's, I think, $9.5 million. Miller makes 8. That's an easy just one in, one out. One guy's younger. The thing, though, that I'll say is the JT Miller thing is just bizarre in terms of, like, how do you come up with the right trade package? What's the market for this guy? Because I feel like his highs and lows are so extreme. His highs, 100-point player, can play the wing, can play the center, high energy, plays well defensively. His lows, very inconsistent night to night, sometimes inconsistent season to season. Obviously, this whole thing with Elias Pettersson, is he a problem in the room? He's been traded before. Like, this isn't his first team, right? So is there something there personality-wise that's going to rock the boat? And then, he's turning 32 in March, so he's not exactly young. But that $8 million at this moment, if he's producing at a high level, is actually not bad. So it's just a really kind of convoluted, messy situation in terms of how do you evaluate JT Miller? And then, the Canucks, when do they think that the package is good enough from these teams to pull the trigger? Because it's such a massive shakeup to their room and to their roster moving forward. This was a guy that was supposed to be part of their core and also just part of like the way that they're built as far as being top heavy. And now he's maybe on the way out.
What's wild to me is at the start of the year, you hear JT Miller is the ultimate hockey player that every single team in the NHL would love to have. But it seems like he can't go more than 18 months with having some crazy feud with whoever's coaching the Canucks. They've gone through multiple coaches there, and it seems like this drama follows him a little bit. But he's supposed to be this ultimate hockey player, so that doesn't connect.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation where, like John mentioned, the Canucks have to get the right package, but also it's kind of getting to the point where is it when they get the right package or is it when you get whatever package is decent enough?
Yeah, they might not have
you have
choice.
to get rid of them. And
Yeah.
so this is a fascinating one because, like you mentioned, the reported package there, that doesn't seem like a great package to get for JT Miller, where it's a lot of it would come down to what the first round pick protections are because the Rangers are in a very weird spot. But like Philip Hedl, good player, not replacing JT Miller in the lineup. Ryan Lindgren doesn't even have a contract past the season, and he's an unrestricted free agent, not even an RFA. Doesn't really add much puck moving ability, which is what the Canucks need. So I look at the list of teams. The Rangers are the most likely, I think, just because they need the shakeup. The Stars have the cap space because of the LTIR situation. I think the Devils are actually the most intriguing fit for him to land with. And then there's the wild card teams. And I want to throw a very crazy scenario at you guys. JT Miller grew up and was around the Pittsburgh area. The Pittsburgh Penguins have Erik Karlsson on the back end, who has a big contract, would create the cap space if he went back in a trade. Obviously, there would be a lot of retention involved to make the money work and such. But you got the Swedish factor there. You got the puck moving ability and the right shot, which is a lot of what the Canucks need. Could there be a fit in some blockbuster mega swap?
That sounds like the biggest lose-lose trade, in my opinion, of all time, because it just makes Pittsburgh a little bit better, but still not good enough to do anything. And then who do the Canucks have playing center, too? You'd think they would need more, but Pittsburgh doesn't have more to offer. It's Erik Karlsson and a bunch of other old guys that they probably wouldn't want. I do think it's intriguing because we have seen the reports recently that Pittsburgh's ready to sort of retool, rebuild, kind of.
And that's kind of where my head was, where the Penguins need to do something, the Canucks need to do something, and I look at what the Capitals have done over the last couple of years, where they've taken some swings. You look at the Pierre-Luc Dubois trade this summer, where they went out and got a bit of a questionable character fit guy, obviously a lot younger, but also not quite the same highs as JT Miller, and swapped him for a redundant asset that they had in Darcy Kemper because they had better goaltending options. Like, I was trying to think of something there, and it's like, I don't think it's likely by any means, but if there were a way for both of those players to move midseason, it could be a situation where it's for each other.
The JT Miller situation will be one to watch over the next little bit, and while you wait, you got a perfect chance to snag some fantastic flight deals to Vancouver, courtesy of Skyscanner. Link or bio for those deals. Okay, so who says no here then? JT Miller, just hear me out.
Yeah,
JT Miller in Pittsburgh with Erik Karlsson, but a third team gets involved because Pittsburgh doesn't actually want JT Miller. They just want
Okay,
Karlsson.
okay.
Right? But what about Erik Karlsson goes to the Canucks? They get the defenseman they need. JT Miller goes to the New Jersey Devils. They then run Hughes, Hischier, JT Miller. And who's the guy that reportedly is kind of getting frustrated that he's not in the NHL?
Nemec?
Simone Nemec.
Oh.
Maybe a little bit more.
Okay.
Goes to
Yeah.
Pittsburgh. Who says
We
no
might
here?
be cooking here.
We might be
That
cooking,
sounds-
all
yeah,
right?
yeah.
I
don't
think
mind
the
that.
Devils would be very scared to move Nemec unless they have to, just because second overall pick, right-hand shot defenseman. They've got a couple guys that are coming up in terms of the contracts and whatnot with Kovacevic, not really having a long-term contract situation there. Like, I think they would be very hesitant to move him. But if you're moving him, you got to get a star player back, and Miller has shown the ability to be that type of player. So maybe we got a situation going here.
He adds to the Jersey point. He adds a different element to their forward group.
Exactly.
Right? They've got a lot of more skilled, smaller-ish players. You know, obviously Meyer is an exception, and their bottom six is, I guess, a little gritty. But like, I feel like JT Miller would add just a different layer.
I'm
And
also-
they're trying to take a step this year. Like, this would be a
Yes.
big, I guess.
Would there be a better
Bold
center
move.
group in the NHL of Hughes, Hischier, Miller? Can you beat that?
No.
Running
Across-
three down the
across
other
NHL?
interesting
not.
thing is they could run Miller back on the wing.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah.
And one of the things with Jack Hughes, phenomenal player, he sucks at the faceoffs. He's like one of the worst
Yes.
in NHL history in terms of being a regular center. Like, he's under 40% for his
Wow.
career, and this season again. JT Miller, good faceoff guy who can also play the wing. Is there a situation where you have Miller playing the wing but taking the faceoffs with Jack Hughes?
I like it. I
All
like
right,
there's
it.
some
I'm
intriguing
sold on
fits
this
there.
deal.
Yeah.
I think
I
it's
like
I
it.
think
All right,
it-
let's
I
do it.
think
Let's make it
should
happen,
Let's
boys.
do it. The biggest three-team trade in
Make a couple
NHL
calls.
history. Let's
One
go.
team we didn't mention that could definitely also use a center is the Colorado Avalanche. I'm not going to bring them up in this circumstance because I think the Canucks would love to send him anywhere but Colorado. That sounds very scary for a team they are competing for a playoff spot against right now. But with Colorado, Cale Makar is just doing it again. Just every single year, he continues to be transcendent in terms of how defensemen typically produce in the NHL. And Levi, I want to ask you, when it's all said and done, where will Cale Makar rank all time among defensemen?
Yeah, it's quite the daunting question considering where he's at in his career, but I'm happy to make a bold claim, if this even is a bold claim. As of right now, I think Cale Makar is like almost, I would say not surefire, I won't put that word in, but top 10. Just the way that he's trending.
That's safe. That's
Pushing,
safe.
well, that's the thing. It's pushing the envelope, too, of top 5. Like, I was getting ready to just go all out and say that. But the numbers don't lie when you look at this guy. You want to talk about, he was the 5th fastest to 100 goals, like which he just did, behind, like, some greats. He's the 2nd fastest defenseman to 300 points, behind one guy, Bobby Orr, and he did it in one more game than Bobby Orr
That's
did.
it.
I've heard he's pretty good.
Yeah, which is
Yeah.
crazy. Bobby Orr might be decent. And then the other fun stat that I wanted to pull up, there's 3 guys all time that are defensemen over a point per game in NHL history. Bobby Orr, Paul Coffey, Cale Makar. That's it. He's 3rd all time in points per game. So I think that the way that I like to frame kind of where I'm at with Cale Makar is he's like if Erik Karlsson never had a down year. Is the way that I'm looking at it, if you want to look at it in the bigger picture, because Erik Karlsson, he's still 15th all-time in defenseman points. I think he's even higher in points per game because he was injured a lot. But he had some down years where he was hurt, yada, yada, yada. And I think that, barring he doesn't have the similar injuries, that's kind of the trajectory of his career with, like, better defensive metrics as well. Like, he's never had a year in the minuses. Erik Karlsson has a few of those. So, yeah, I think like, I am more than confident saying this is a top 10 defenseman all time that we're watching play in and out every single night. Just everything he's doing there. Now, he is on a great team, but I think this is also a product of where the NHL is going. Because you look at the last 20, 25 years, the goals are down. The goals are up now, and so I think that's one thing that obviously helps his case, and same with guys like Quinn Hughes. Quinn Hughes is like 6th all-time in points per game right now, which is crazy. But yeah, I think to sum things up, top 10 defenseman in my books, and I'm confident saying
The comparison to Karlsson is very interesting to me because at the same age, Karlsson had 2 Norris trophies and 2 runner-ups. I think we kind of forget how elite that trajectory was going, and then obviously like the past 8 years or so hasn't been as great except for the kind of outlier year where he went and got a 3rd Norris trophy.
Yes.
And so when you're looking all time, he's got to start racking up some of these Norris trophies to really get up there in the conversations when you look at Bobby Orr having 8 and Doug Harvey and Nick Lidstrom having 7 and a bunch of those guys, Ray Bourque there. The top 5 conversation is going to be very difficult to push into, but I think one of the key differences that Makar has already in his back pocket is that Conn Smythe trophy, where he was the best player getting a team through to the Stanley Cup. That's something that not a lot of defensemen have done, and the defensemen that have done it are the top-tier, elite, all-time defensemen. So as you mentioned, if he stays healthy, he's on track to be a top 10 guy, which is pretty crazy to say for a guy that was playing AJHL hockey in his draft year and went 4th overall.
Brooks Bandits, man.
It's for me, it's Orr, Lidstrom, and then everybody else. And I think there's like, you know, you can make the argument for like 5 to 8 guys being in that 3 spot, 4 spot, 5 spot. And I think Makar can easily find himself in that second tier below Lidstrom and Orr. But there's also a funny thing going on where Quinn Hughes, I mean, is he that much worse than Cale Makar?
Yes,
like,
that's the fascinating
should we be talking about
here.
both of them in the same breath? Probably. The thing about Makar is that he's got this sort of like influence on the game, I feel like. Like, players are growing up wanting to be him. Landon DuPont.
I was going to say, Landon DuPont looks exactly like him.
Yeah, Makar 2.0. And that's the thing with Orr, was that he changed the game. Lidstrom is kind of different. He was just so smart and so mistake-free that I don't know if he quite changed the game.
He was also incredible, like, for 20 years.
Yeah, the longevity.
Yeah,
like, he's kind of an exception in that sense. But most of these other guys near the top of the heap have that sort of, like, breakthrough quality where they're able to change the game, or they become that guy for a generation to look up to. And I think Makar's already there. And then, the Norrises need to pick up. He's already got his cup, so that's, a feather in his cap, and the Conn Smythe. So he's on a really nice trajectory. And, Nathan McKinnon thinks he's going to be the best defenseman of all time when it's all said and done. Obviously, he's biased, but, like, for him to just throw that out there, I think that means something. And then Jared Bednar's, praised him endlessly as well. Like, these are two guys that, again, are biased, but like they know their hockey. They wouldn't just say this about a guy and put pressure on him because I think they know that he is headed towards all-time great.
I'm glad you mentioned the Quinn Hughes part of it, because I think there's a very real scenario after this season. We're talking about Quinn Hughes with 2 Norrises and Cale Makar with 1.
Yep.
Where it's like, we're talking about Cale Makar like this, and I don't think anyone is thinking it's an outlandish conversation by any means. Like, I think it's a very genuine thing where Cale Makar is on track to be one of those greats. And I think there's a very realistic scenario at the end of this year. We're talking about Quinn Hughes with more Norrises basically in the exact same timeline.
Yeah, no, it's
Well,
true.
Quinn Hughes isn't winning a Norris if the Canucks don't make the playoffs.
That's true.
And Canucks right now are going up and down, whether they're good, whether they're bad. This rebuild, retool of their roster has been weird. They've got these prized young assets in Hughes and Pettersson, but it seems like every other year they're good and then they're bad. One team right now that's trending really well is the Montreal Canadiens. Pretty short rebuild. They tanked for a couple years. They got Slavkovsky. They got some other young guns. But it seems like they're really trending towards challenging for a playoff spot this year and for the years to come. John, I know you got a lot on them right now, so I want you to empty your notebook on the Montreal Canadiens rebuild.
Yeah, so let's frame this around a conversation I had with a young executive in an NHL front office recently, where he was kind of lamenting the fact that from the outside before he entered the league, he just assumed that teams had these long-term visions and these long-term strategies, and they kept going on that path. But he's come to get really doubt that line of thinking, where he looks around the league and goes, okay, there's this team that says we're rebuilding, and then 2 years later they're signing free agents that are blocking their young players from coming up. If you look at Detroit, they went after free agents too early. Columbus, they went after free agents too early. I mean, Don Waddell, he's trying to fix everything there, but that was the Jarmo Kekalainen that did that. You look back on the Dorion tenure in Ottawa, and the owner had a lot to do with it, but they were kind of all over the place in terms of, let's buy, let's sell, we're retooling, we're rebuilding. It was a little messy. With the Canadiens, I see the opposite. I see sustainability, I see brick-by-brick building, and I see a team that, has a long-term vision, is actually sticking to it. And I know this seems like a low bar to clear, but in the NHL, apparently, it doesn't happen very often. And one thing I'll say is, the gradual progression in the standings. It's been a nice uptick every year. There hasn't been a major step back. They keep moving slowly in the right direction. 2, they're locking up guys to long-term deals that they really believe in. So Slavkovsky, Gouli, Caulfield, Suzuki. those guys are in good shape financially for the next 5-10 years. Another thing I'll talk about too is there's something to be said about how they've been thinking outside the box, this organization. So Quinn Hughes, he was an agent before he became GM. He just stepped straight from being an agent to GM. Very rare thing, but ownership thought this is worth doing. We believe in this guy. Marty St. Louis, obviously legendary hockey player, but he was coaching a Pee Wee team when he got brought to the NHL. That's what I would say is thinking outside the box. Also, they've gone out and acquired Patrick Laine, Alex Newhook, Kirby Dach, Sean Monahan. Those are 4 players in their 20s that were kind of, their careers are kind of sideways a little bit in other organizations. They acquire them, they get them to work with this guy, Adam Nicholas, who runs their director of hockey, or he is their director of hockey development, and they kind of get rehabilitated as players. And not all those guys, are on the track to be, stars, but they've taken chances on guys in their early 20s who needed to change the scenery, and it's for the most part worked out well. You look at Monahan, he's now playing elsewhere, and the Habs acquired a first-round pick when they got Monahan, and then they traded him and got another first-round pick. So that alone says a lot. The other thing I'll say about thinking outside the box is that Martin St. Louis has this whole thing about how he thinks that you can teach hockey sense. So conventional wisdom says, hey, once you're, 10, 15 years old, you're kind of tapped out in your hockey sense. You kind of are what you are in terms of how you see the game and sort of the reads you make and whatnot. We hear it all every time in the lead up to the draft. This guy's good hockey sense, bad hockey sense. Martin St. Louis says he thinks that's BS, and he's been working with his team to try to figure out, okay, how can each player be a little bit better on the hockey sense, hockey IQ lane of things. So I think that's pretty fascinating. And then the last thing I'll talk about is I think they found their superstar. Like, they've been going through this process of rebuilding, and hey, in the Slavkovsky draft, there was Logan Cooley there. In hindsight, probably want Logan Cooley, although Slavkovsky's still a really good player. Okay, that's one strike. In the Matej Michkov draft, they take David Reinbacher. Again, not ideal. We'll see what Reinbacher turns out to be, but they probably swung and missed there. But then they sort of right or wrong by taking Ivan Demidov recently, and I think based on what we're seeing in the KHL, the range of outcomes are showing that he can be a superstar talent in the NHL, and I think his floor is pretty high. So I think that any team that's building towards being a sustainable winner needs that superstar, and they've presumably found it. And along the way, they've built up this core, and I think they're going to hit their ground running. Not necessarily this season. I don't even know if they make the playoffs this season, but starting next season, they're going to be a real threat. And it's all been done, again, long-term vision and actually following through with it, not getting distracted by the shiny new thing. And it's a breath of fresh air, honestly, in the NHL.
Thanks to Skyscanner. If you're trying to see the Young Gun Habs live in person, just hit the link in our bio or description for some top-shelf flight deals. I think it's really interesting that the Habs in general, because their fans are really, they're just chomping at the bit for this team to be good. And this is turnaround. But you look at it, this is a relatively short rebuild. They were in the Stanley Cup final 5 years ago. How many other teams can say you go from a Stanley Cup final to a first overall pick to back in the playoff hunt in half a decade? You look at the Buffalo Sabres, the Ottawa Senators, the Detroit Red Wings, and how long it's taken them to rebuild, retool. There are 3 teams in the NHL right now that I think are kind of facing the prospects of a full-blown rebuild sucky period. The Nashville Predators, the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Calgary Flames. 3 very different front offices. Which of them do you have confidence in that they might follow this mold? Which do you think might follow the Detroit sign free agents too early mold?
Let's do the trial and check guys off the list here. Nashville, I think they're a little confused in their 2 timelines, which signing all these free agents in the summer and then trying to rebuild, retool. I'm not sure what Barry Trotz's favorite phrase is there. So not Nashville. The thing with Pittsburgh is that I think that they will do a responsible long-term rebuild after Crosby's retired, but at this point, I feel like they're stuck in at worst doing a retool. And, at best, I guess, trying to compete, which is not happening right now. It's not going so well for Kyle Dubas. So that leaves Calgary. I mean, the thing with Calgary is that they've remained competitive. They haven't bottomed out. It would probably be advantageous if they bottomed out to get that superstar, to get that high pick. But I think they might, out of those 3, kind of lesser of three evils or whatever you want to call it, I think they're the team where they can do a Montreal-style rebuild and sort of be patient with this. And another Canadian market, so hey, are the fans going to be patient? That's another story, but I think it's Calgary.
I think the interesting spot with the Flames is going to be this summer. They've got basically their best youngsters, Wolf, Coronado, Zary, all of them need contracts. So do they lock them up long term and give them the money of the $30 million of cap space they have, or do they bridge them and spend $20 million in free agency? If they do the latter of that, we will know they are not following the Montreal path.
Yes.
If they do the front end of that, we know they might be looking long term.
Yeah.
And it'll be really interesting to see what they do, because they are in no man's land of right around the playoff spot. But you don't. am of the vein, you don't actively want to cheer for your team to lose.
Sure.
Right? It's ugly. It's not fun. With hockey, we watch hockey. It's enjoyable 3 nights a week or 4 nights a week, whatever it is, to throw on a hockey game. If your team sucks, it's not very enjoyable. So I'd rather enjoy watching a team for 8 months of the year and they don't make the playoffs than not. So that'll be an interesting one. We are a little bit less of the way into the year of the PWHL season, Kyle. And I know you're all over this. We're about just over a third of the way into it. Year 2 of the P-Dub. How's it trending so far? What are the best storylines so far this year?
Yeah, it's been a great season so far. A lot of compelling storylines early this season. I think the biggest thing that people were wanting to see this year was Sarah Fillier, the first overall pick, coming in, a Team Canada national team star, and she's really helped the Sirens turn things around. Last year, they only had 9 wins all season, finished last to, of course, get Fillier in the draft. They've got 6 wins in their first 10 games. They're really in that kind of third kind of place in the standings and pushing towards a playoff spot. And a lot of that has been her instant chemistry with a Team USA star in Alex Carpenter, where before the PWHL, we didn't really get to see these Team USA and Team Canada stars play together really at all with any kind of regularity. And now we're starting to get some of that. And we're getting that in an exciting way in Fillier and Carpenter. Fillier is tied for the league lead in points and goals as a rookie. Of course, she's 24 years old, not like a 18-year-old Macklin Celebrini doing it, but she's been fantastic to start the season. And then the other player that has really kind of taken the reins this year is Emerance Mashmeyer with the Ottawa Charge, an MVP-level season so far. She's played 9 games this season, the most of any goaltender. She's facing over 32 shots against per game, which compared to the NHL would be leading all NHL starters in terms of shots against. And she has a .934 save percentage. If it wasn't for Emerance Mashmeyer keeping the Ottawa Charge in these close games where the Charge have yet to score 4 or more goals in a game this season, they would be probably last in the standings. But Mashmeyer has been exceptional this season. So I look at Sarah Fillier and her performance and Emerance Mashmeyer and kind of the goaltending performance, and I pose to you guys the excitement of these kind of star-level players coming through. The goaltending, of course, being that big thing there versus the star player coming in through the draft. What kind of route would you guys necessarily have as kind of the favorite MVP type thing? Do you guys prefer the goaltender that has been such an important player for them, or the star player that has come in and completely turned around a franchise?
Well, I'll say this. I was just talking about the Flames. Their star-stud man right now is Dustin Wolf.
Yep.
Goaltender, which is really, really exciting. Would I trade Dustin Wolf for a long-term outlook of a team of like a star center? That's a tougher question, but probably. Because at the end of the day, the star center, it's just a little bit flashier to watch. The best goalies in the league, no matter if it's men's or women's, usually they're not letting in a lot of goals. Sure, they'll get a highlight reel save, but what are you watching? What are you checking box scores for? You're checking box scores for points. Who had the most goals tonight? Who had a hat trick?
So you're a big Alex Nedeljkovic guy.
Yes, exactly. I don't need the Tendy with 34 saves. I need the one with a goal and assist game. That's what I want right there. That's funny.
So Fillier, of course, has been the star level. I think she's in that conversation for MVP right now. I look at Mashmeyer and what she's done with the Charge, definitely up there. And then I think the bigger conversation, kind of long-term for the PWHL, is these takeover tour games. They've been doing neutral sites. They've got 4 games in the books already. They have 5 coming up in February and later on, and they've been a huge hit. Like, these games have been getting well over 12,000. You look at sellouts in Vancouver and Quebec City as well. These are kind of auditions for some expansion franchises where the league has said openly that they're interested or open to expanding by 2 teams as soon as next season, which I think is an earlier timeline than a lot of people expected. So when you look at some of these totals here, Seattle doing well, Denver setting an American record for a professional women's hockey game, where are you guys' heads at in terms of where you would like to see an expansion franchise for the PW?
I don't know if it makes sense like financially, but there's something about Quebec City that is drawing me in, like not having an NHL team, having a nice rink, French Canada kind of being able to get behind something other than the Habs, I guess. There's something about that. And the PWHL can kind of, put their flag down in Quebec City and see what happens there. But I don't know if like financially because part of the reason why the NHL doesn't go back there is because there's not enough like corporate headquarters, not enough sponsorship. I don't know if that factors in, and Denver makes more sense, Seattle makes more sense, because Seattle obviously has a ton of these massive companies that can shell out for suites and whatnot. So Seattle, I think, will be number 2 to me.
Yeah, the interesting part for the PWHL, which is different from other leagues, is it's single entity. It's owned by one ownership group. So those ownership groups or whoever you want to come in, not necessarily as much of a factor. So that could lend to Quebec City being a great solution there. It was great seeing players coming in Quebec Nordiques jerseys.
Yes. 2
of the Swedish players came in wearing Forsberg Sundin jerseys.
Nice.
Marie-Philippe Poulin came in with a Quebec Rempart Simone Gagne jersey. Like, it's always great seeing some of those. And so it's been a lot of fun to see the PWHL takeover games. This upcoming weekend, we have the Scotiabank Arena game, which is another big game for the Toronto Scepters coming up. So those totals there show you that there's a big appetite for women's hockey and more franchises coming up.
And it looks good that that's the passion project. They want to grow this league, the ownership of it. It's versus the NHL, where it's like, how can we make more money? It seems like a lot of the time. But we do love both leagues because we love the sport of hockey. And this week's Why We Love Hockey moment goes back to literally last week, actually. It was right after the show. I saw this on X. This guy's at the barbershop getting his hair cut or whatever, and he's just chatting with a guy, and he sees wearing a Pittsburgh logo. So he's like, "Oh, hey, how the Penguins doing this year?" He's like, and Sidney Crosby is just so classy, man. Just the guy's like, "Oh yeah, we could be doing better. Just it's all right." You look at stars in the league today, and not to say that any of these guys, like the McDavids, McKinnons, Makars of the world, aren't classy by any means, but Sid the Kid is just still I think the face of the NHL.
Top tier.
When it comes down to it, he is the face of the league and the greatest spokesperson for the league. It'd be awesome if he did a little bit more of that spokesing thing, but spokesing thing. I'm gonna eat that one. But whatever.
I love that he does the season ticket, knock on door.
Yeah, that's the best.
Every year, and also, even if you just relate it back to how he deals with the media, which is sort of dealing with fans through the media, he gives reporters the time of day. Like, it's very rare. Like, now the superstars in the league are mostly kind of trying to evade the media. Crosby will sit there, "Hey guys, what do you want to talk about?" And I think that he takes the face of the league aspect of his job seriously, not to an extent where he's being flashy or has to be in every commercial, but I think he's trying to kind of be a good role model and just be a good citizen and push the league forward. Him and Ovechkin, they've been the guys for like 2 decades now.
Sid might be the most scandal-free superstar.
Yep.
Yeah.
Of all time. I can't think of anyone who.
Well, we know nothing about him, right? We know
nothing. He's so hidden secret.
I don't even know about like what's his.
Is he married?
Yeah, that's.
I think he has a girlfriend. I'm pretty sure that is confirmed. But are they married? Who knows?
I think the only non-hockey thing I know about him is that he's really into World War history. Like, that's like his little like geeky hobby. But other than that, it's like hockey. And then what else? What do we know about this guy? He's from Cole Harbour. What else do we know, guys?
I'm excited to see when he retires. Is he going to all of a sudden be like Gretzky and go on a panel like that? Or is he going to just completely disappear?
I feel like he might go the Mario Lemieux route and be like, I want to invest in a team. I don't know if it'll be the Penguins or not, but that could be interesting.
Oh, Mario Sid owned
future head
Penguins.
coach of an Arizona franchise.
Well,
That's the route we're going down?
I will say, I did see FSG is reportedly interested in buying the Celtics. And if they need to fund a Celtics purchase, who are they selling the Penguins to? Sid? Come on. I don't know
not a bad thought.
There you go. One other thing. You would think that preparing that segment, you would remember your haircut.
Yeah, literally, right? That's crazy. I'm prepping this yesterday, and I completely forget that I have a haircut appointment, so it's getting real long back here. I think the Minnesota State championship for hockey is coming up, so I gotta just get my hair ready to set up for that one. Let's move on to the best part about the show. We got to get the chain out for top shelf trivia. Kyle won last week. Levi, take us away.
Yeah, credit to Kyle for the win last week, so he gets to don the chain
Let's go
today. And I'm just gonna get the board out. Give him his tally. Give him his flowers. I will say, first Kyle win on his own.
Yeah, I needed some help for the last two. Had to bring in a ringer.
His teammate Josh was doing the heavy lifting the last couple of weeks, but
Us NHL editors, we're a franchise here.
yes, there we go. So
Hey, you cover that.
all right, so I don't know if you guys have seen, but the NHL's been having some fun with these quarter century teams, where from 2000 to 2025, they've handpicked their best 3 forwards, best 2 defensemen, and best goalie for every team. They're kind of going through and unveiling them as the season goes on. So simple today, I'm testing you on those. I've gone and picked 3 teams. You guys, it's first one to buzz in gets to answer first. 1 wrong guess per team. So if you get 1 wrong, you don't get any more chances at the team. Let's see who can rack up the most points. And we're starting off with the Colorado Avalanche. Aidan's in.
Nathan McKinnon.
You think Nathan McKinnon's here?
Gotta be on this list.
Nathan McKinnon
And then-
is here.
And then I'm next, and we go around. Okay.
No. It's
you
just
keep
So I keep going.
Yeah,
Oh,
you
you're
can
gonna
just
keep going?
rapid
Okay, that
fire.
makes
Okay,
sense.
gotcha.
No. Sorry, you don't keep going, but rebuzz.
Okay.
Oh.
I'm saying, okay.
Joe Sakic.
Joe Sakic also here.
Peter Forsberg.
Peter Forsberg also here.
You can give you that one.
That was Kyle.
Cale Makar.
Cale Makar also on the team. Nicely done. We only got 2 players left here. No wrong guesses. Nothing from John.
Jose
yet.
Theodore.
Jose Theodore. No.
Did he
Incorrect.
Did he not win a heart with Colorado?
Incorrect. They didn't have
Or
him on
they
the
robbed
first
him
team.
in
Montreal.
anyways?
Patrick Waugh.
Gotcha.
Patrick Waugh
Yeah,
is
that makes
the
more
goalie.
sense. My bad.
Good get, John. Last player here. Just a defense we're looking for.
Adam Foote.
Adam Foot's correct.
Good show.
Good
Nicely
call.
done. All right, so you guys got all of those. What, 3, 2, and 1?
Yeah.
Is that what
So
we're
I get
looking
point,
like?
or are we just we're counting it by like
You got
3,
3.
2, and 1?
You got
Gotcha.
3.
Okay.
Kyle's got
Okay.
2. John's got 1. All right. I didn't think you were going to clear the board, to be honest, so that's impressive. Next team up, the Montreal Canadiens quarter century team.
Nick Suzuki.
Nick Suzuki, not on the team. No more guesses for John on the Habs.
Max Pacioretty.
Max Pacioretty, also not on the
Wow.
team.
So it's
Oh,
just, it's just
boy.
you. How many can you get?
You can take your time here.
Okay.
You can cook a little bit.
Carey Price.
Carey Price is
Yeah,
the
we should've
goalie.
started there.
That probably
Should've
would have been,
started
yeah.
Okay.
It's a
Although, to
defenseman,
be
too.
fair, Jose Theodore, I think, had 2, or no, just 1
He had
during
the
2000s.
great season.
Yeah.
He had the fake heart where they took it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Saku Koivu.
Saku Koivu,
I
good
was
get
thinking about that.
on the team. That's 2 more for Kyle. He's up to 4 now in the lead. You still got 4 guys left, both defensemen and 2 forwards.
Andre Markov.
Andrei Markov on the back end. That is correct as well. There we go.
Ooh. The last defense.
I don't.
These last
It's a toss up
yeah.
for the last defenseman. Shea Weber.
Shea Weber's the defenseman.
Okay.
Really?
Wow.
Over PK Subban?
I
He's
figured
cooking.
they would lean towards that cup run.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I
And
think
then
the
the
last
last 2 forwards.
2 forwards left to clear
not
the board.
Max Pacioretty. That's interesting. I'm gonna tap out at this point. I'll just throw it. It's very wrong, but Michael Ryder.
Yes.
Michael Ryder is indeed very wrong.
Who are the last 2?
Last 2
forwards?
guys you're
Max
missing.
Pacioretty
One of
didn't make
them, one of them wasn't really a star, but he's just like the heart of the Habs for so long. Thomas Buchanan's, and
Oh.
then they had Alex Kovalev on this team
Yeah.
as well.
Oh
Really?
yeah.
Remember
yeah.
when they
Yeah.
That's a good
Buccaneers
one.
went to Toronto? They made him shave his goatee.
Yeah.
Like Lou or something like that. Yeah.
So,
All right,
no,
so you got
no,
4 there.
no points for you two. Kyle picked up 4 there,
Okay.
so he's up to
6-3-1?
6-3-1.
Okay.
So we're
That
gonna
was
need
big. That
to
was
see
big.
something out of you guys in this last round, or else Kyle has this. The last team, very fun one here. They're not the most fun team. The Buffalo Sabres.
Oh boy.
Jason Pominville.
Oh, that's right.
Jason Pominville is correct. Nicely done, John.
Ryan Miller.
Wait, don't I get to go again?
No, we got a
No,
buzz.
it's just
We
rapid
got a buzz
fire.
every time.
Ryan Miller's correct.
Rasmus Dahlin.
Rasmus Dahlin's on the list.
Ooh, nice.
John's up to 3.
I think that's-
Kyle's at 7.
Seals the dub.
Thomas Vanek.
Thomas Vanek is correct.
Danny Briere.
Danny Briere's correct.
Wow,
Look at
you
guys.
guys just flew through this, and
One
I was
more
so
left.
lost on Buffalo.
Defenseman.
Last defenseman. Pretty good one, too.
Oh well, it's probably wrong then. Christian Ehrhoff.
It is
That's
not
the only
Christian
That's the
Ehrhoff.
only pull I had.
It is
Pretty
not Christian
good
Ehrhoff.
one.
That's funny.
A pretty good one.
I think he played there for a while. I don't know.
I wouldn't say
I
like
can't really
he's-
think
he's-
of many defensemen.
He's not
who
an
go through
elite
Buffalo.
defenseman,
Didn't
but
Ehrhoff
like
sign
he's
like a
good-
double-digit year
good Sabre.
contract with the Sabres or something like that. I don't know.
he was there for a while. Yeah.
I think we're going to have to tap
Defense.
out.
Yeah, tap out. Who was
Nothing.
it?
Nothing.
No,
Yes,
I mean,
no
he's
yes.
got the sealed
Come
win.
on,
Yeah, so
come on.
Last guy on the list here we're looking for was Brian Campbell.
Oh my
yeah.
goodness, he's
Campbell.
from my hometown. How did I forget
Come
about
on, Kyle.
Good
the one
tenure.
time I don't go hometown bias?
Well, you get to keep the chain.
Well,
to keep the
I
chain
feel like I
on.
shouldn't after forgetting Brian Campbell.
Yeah, that's it's impressive stuff. That you took that second one where me and John
That
just
helped a
mailed
lot.
in Montreal.
I would have had
Definitely cooked.
Pacioretty as one of my first guesses. So yeah,
Honestly,
that helped.
starting with Price seems
That-
logical.
yeah.
That is.
But no, these teams have been a lot of fun. It's fun to keep up
That
with
was a good
them,
one.
and,
That was a
you
good
know,
one.
the quarter century, you can get a Darlene with a Briere. Like, it's really interesting.
Yeah, total swing. It's interesting that Darlene is on this team because he has been there for a while and he's had a couple good years, but it's not like he's really accomplished
No.
much at Buffalo.
Well, it's funny. We couldn't even think of the other defenseman, and it's Brian Campbell, who I think most people associate more with two other teams than
Yep.
the Blackhawks and
Chicago.
Panthers.
Yeah.
So
No, it's Buffalo. It's been a tough quarter century, I suppose, for that franchise.
what a way to finish off.
Montreal's is pretty solid, and then Colorado's what a quarter century.
Sky.
Like the two swings of like the early 2000s and the
Yeah.
late,
Yeah.
like the current is just fantastic. They're in an interesting spot now, though, the Avalanche, and it'll be interesting to watch their storyline down the stretch here, and we'll be covering it every step of the way here at Top Shelf. That's all the time we do have, though, this week for Top Shelf, brought to you by our friends over at Skyscanner. For John Matisz, Kyle Cushman with the chain, Levi Smith, and myself, Aidan Thakkar, we will see you next time.